welcome to Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. I am one of your post-game hosts and weekly contributors, Desmond. I'm here with my partner, Dre. We've got Mark Rogers with us, and Justin Rowe will be joining us here shortly. Before we get started, please like and subscribe. Share the video out on social media. It helps grow the channel. We just crossed the 5,000 subscriber mark, so thank you so much for all that have subscribed. And if you haven't, just hit that button. It's real easy, and it'd be much appreciated. And last but not least, please join Mark's main channel, The Voice of College Football, and also join his Patreon, where you can talk not only college football, but also pro football 24/7, 365. Dre, how we doing today, my friend?
Doing well. About yourself?
Doing pretty good, and we actually have Justin hopping in right now. Justin, how we doing?
Good, guys. How are you?
We are doing great, doing great. And Mark, how about yourself?
Doing well, doing well. This is a long line of live streams and records today. So, man, we've been busier than usual today for some reason, like every half hour from like 10 a.m. on to 8 o'clock.
That's a bit of a stretch there. That's a long stretch of content. So kudos to you, with hardest working man in media. So greatly appreciated. All right. Well, we are done with the out of conference. So the people who are upset with Michigan's out of conference schedule can go to the wayside. They can be happy now. We are in Big Ten play. How's everybody feeling about that?
Feeling good. I'm ready to play big boy football, right? I mean, it's felt like a little bit like these are scrimmages up until now. But I'm excited, even though, I mean, Maryland any year wouldn't be like the top tier, I would say, opponent for the Big Ten. But I think it's a good starting point for Michigan. And so it's a great testimony to see how this defense is going to be, because Maryland, not great all around, but great on the offensive side of the ball, especially statistically up until this point.
Absolutely. And what I'm interested to get everybody's take on it, but my thought with the Maryland offense is, if you have ever just heard of someone who may have had some potentially heart problems or need some testing going on, they do what's called a stress test, where they put you on a treadmill. They have you run a little bit. They're not going to have you run, a marathon or anything like that. They want to see that heart rate kind of just punch up just a little bit to see kind of what's going on, what happens when that heart rate kind of goes up a little bit. And I would liken this play, specifically the Michigan defense playing the Maryland offense, to a stress test. Like, I don't think that this Maryland offense is going to score 35 or anything like that on this Michigan defense. But I do think in between the 20s, I think it's going to be at least a little bit stressful, where that heart rate might get up a little bit. But I do think that Maryland does pose some challenges. Dre, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm thinking along the lines of that. That is going to be definitely additional stress, at least some amount of stress compared to the last 3 weeks. I mean, I've made the joke, but I'm serious. You can combine the three teams and Michigan still beat them by 30. That's how minuscule the competition level was. It just is what it is. And, look, the players can't control that. They play who's across from them. And by all means, they've done an incredible job to lead the nation's points per game. I think about 55.3 points per game Michigan's doing. So, look, they're doing their job. There are a couple of things that I am curious about that I would like to see improved. Look, the fact of the matter is, this team didn't record a sack against UConn last week. So, I mean, that is, like, concerning for me. Was it UConn? Yeah, UConn last week. So, I mean, I think they have 8 sacks in total. I think it was 6 or 7 of those sacks came week 1 versus Colorado State or something like that. So, I am a little bit concerned, being that Maryland's strength is the passing game, and versus what you would think inferior offensive line talent compared to what Maryland has. Not that saying it's going to be great shakes, but I would assume it's better than the last 3 weeks. I would hope we do get better pressure on Talia as opposed to last week. So that's a bit of concern, but that's a part of the stress, right, Des? Let's find out more what this team is capable of. And, so from that standpoint, I'm looking forward to it because it's hard to get a good read on how good this team really is. We know they should be really good. We know how good they were last year. We know what they have returning. We know what their goals are for this year. So, hopefully we can get a little bit of a better gauge after Maryland.
Absolutely. Mark, what are your thoughts on it? On Maryland being the stress test for Michigan?
Yeah, how about the stress test on JJ?
Mm.
Just in regards to not necessarily Maryland having a great defense, but Big Ten opener at the big house, more people watching the game nationwide, and definite step up in speed, athleticism, an upgrade on the other side of the ball, and the importance of the game being ramped up this week. So JJ for the second straight week carries the load, play one on, but this time against an opponent that just beat SMU. That's a pretty decent win. So they come in 3-0 as well. So JJ gets the stress test.
Justin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think JJ now doesn't have a cushion either. Cade won't be playing, so all of a sudden, 3 weeks ago we thought it was Cade as the guy with JJ as the cushion. Now JJ's the guy, and unfortunately, there's no cushion for him. It's just him, and you've got Davis Warren at QB2 now, but it's a very different situation than Michigan was in to begin the year, and so. I think, is JJ going to continue to complete 90% of his passes throughout the year? Probably not, right? We're not going to expect that. But I think to Mark's point, it's going to be interesting. I actually was talking to a couple of guys that we had on the Blue by 90 podcast last night, guys on the team, and they, we talked about, all right, is Maryland's defense, the best in the Big Ten? No, but they're Big Ten football players. And those guys are ready for that, and I think that's the next test, as we're saying. And they're ready to see, how does the speed of a Big Ten football player change how you go through your progressions, and how quick a guy, comes back on the ball when they make a break. And so it'll be different for sure. And I bet you there will be a few plays where we see some growing pains from JJ.
Yeah, and I think it'll be important to see how he bounces back, because being a first-year full-time starter is just something new, and we haven't really seen him make a mistake and then immediately be back out on the field, right? We haven't seen him throw a pick six, if you will, or just an interception overall, and then to see how he bounces back from that. I am not – go ahead.
Yeah, I was trying to recall the Michigan State game. I know he got back in the game after he fumbled the ball. And I believe he recovered. I'm pretty sure he got back in the game. I'm not sure if Harbaugh pulled him in that same series, and I can't recall. But he did. I think he has faced some adversity after making a mistake, but as you said, Des, not as a starter.
Right. Well, and then also, too, coming right back out the next play, right? So I throw an interception, we go to the sideline, whatever. Say the team gets a field goal, and now the offense is back, and I am the quarterback still. I don't foresee JJ having any confidence issues. He seems like just a really level-headed kid, but very confident, and as he should be. He's incredibly talented, but you just never know. Like we've seen some guys that struggle with it, and we've seen some guys that have the shortest memory you could have. So it will be interesting to see how he handles that. And really overall, I mean, JJ hasn't made a lot of mistakes too when you think about his Michigan career. I mean, I think he had the Michigan State game, there were the 2 fumbles in that game. I mean, outside of that, he hasn't made a lot of mistakes in a Michigan uniform.
It really hasn't been in that many high leverage situations overall, so that kind of comes with it. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity that Maryland could apply some amount of pressure. I think if there's any kind of pressure, it'll be if Maryland's putting up some points, on a somewhat regular basis. They're not saying they're just going up and down the field like Washington did against MSU. Oops, but um,
I had to
sorry,
slip that in there. I love it.
had to
I
slip that
love
in
it.
there.
MSU
But
catching strays. We gotta love it.
maybe not quite
Always.
like that. But if the Michigan defense, due to like you said, Justin, the speed they haven't seen quite this year, takes a minute to adjust. Yeah, maybe JJ feels like, oh, maybe I got to score a touchdown here. I got to do a little bit more. Um, I'm not sure what Donovan Edwards' status is, but it doesn't so far it doesn't sound like he's going to play Saturday. So I mean, what happens if Blake Corum gets banged up a little bit? So those are the type of things you can't foresee that can happen in the course of a game that it may require a little bit more pressure being on JJ's shoulder. So I don't know. He really hasn't had that much high leverage to deal with.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, the focus is on Michigan. Our focus here is obviously on Michigan, but when the nation looks at this game, it's mostly about Michigan because they're the high-ranked team, they're the Big Ten champion, all of that. But Maryland has to be going into this game thinking, Maryland, for the time Mike Loxley has been there, looks down on Rutgers and maybe a team or two from the Big Ten West, maybe this year Indiana. That's where they collect their 2 or 3 wins in conference, and they've never gone into the upper division of the Big Ten East. But they believe that this is the year. They tasted a winning season for the first time in 12 years last year. They won a bowl game. They did some things that they haven't done in 10 or 12 years last year. And I think that they're probably just focused on, hey, this is a measuring stick for us. So they're going to be amped up. And then just one other note, how do they prepare defensively? Is their game plan going to be to try to extend the game, try to make Michigan drive a long field, umbrella coverage, keep everything in front of us, then turn it over to our offense, hope that they make a mistake when they're on offense? Or, hey, this is a first-time starting quarterback against the Big Ten defense. We're going to go after him, shake him up a little bit.
Marcus, it's interesting. Real quick, sorry, Des. It's interesting that you brought up Maryland's mindset. Coming into this game, I was reading a quote that Loxley said about the upcoming game. He basically said, "Look, we understand this is a great test for us. We understand what we're up against. Our goal is to stay close. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but to stay close within the game." Get to the full court and basically see what happens. He said verbatim, we have nothing to lose. So that kind of gives you an insight into how Maryland looks at this game. They know that Michigan, on paper, is the superior team, and they're coming in here essentially with nothing to lose and playing free. So that can be very dangerous for the Wolverines because if Maryland comes out and they get to a hot start, or at least a good start, those guys start getting confidence from the sideline. You never know what kind of dogfight you may find yourself into.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, but here I am sitting as a Michigan guy, and I think we're going to go into mid-October, and everyone's still going to be talking about how Michigan's untested. You go to Maryland. I mean, knock on wood, right, that they're not going to slip up in one of these games, and you could go to Kinnick for sure. We've all experienced that as Michigan people, right? Nobody wants to go into Kinnick. Thank God it's a noon game. If it was a night, I'd be crapping my pants right now.
Justin, don't let Dez hear that. Dez doesn't like to hear that. He makes fun of me all the time. But go ahead.
Hey, listen, I've been scarred too many times. All right,
me too, man.
Kinnick at night is a different building. But I mean, when you're looking at the schedule and you got Maryland, then at Iowa, then at Indiana, and it's like until that Penn State game in mid-October, I feel like everyone's going to be having the same conversation. Like, basically cupcake non-conference into the start of a cupcake. A little bit, it's not cupcake, but similar big start to the Big Ten schedule. And so, but what I love is that stress test in this week against Maryland is for the defense, and then the stress test the next week against Iowa is for the offense. And so it's a pretty good setup actually for the beginning of this season until Penn State, and now I have no idea how good Auburn is because there's been a lot of crap going on at Auburn, but Penn State looked pretty damn good. I'll say that. And so that all of a sudden that game looks to be, the first one that Michigan has circled. But, I think, focusing on this one this week, it definitely, there's going to be a lot of people figuring things out. And one piece of that is you're finally going to have your starters play a full game. That hasn't happened even close to that this year. I was talking to Blake the other day, and it's like he would get like, a few plays here and there in the first quarter and obviously scored 5 touchdowns, but half of them were on 1-yard runs. And so I think that's one thing is how do you stand up for 4 quarters and last and do all that stuff, because you haven't even had to think about that yet.
Yeah, it definitely changes things to have to play, to go from kind of we know we're probably going to play a half, maybe, 2.5 quarters max, and then kind of wrap it up to guys playing for a full 4 quarters. And I wonder if that, any potential, you think about it, but playing a full game, I haven't looked at the weather, but I know today in Michigan, it's pretty warm. Do you worry about things like cramps and, those types of things kind of come into play when you're straining yourself for a longer amount of time. So I don't think it'll be a huge deal, but definitely something to think about. Mark, go ahead.
I've got a quick question for Justin. So obviously Donovan Edwards has been banged up, and as Dre mentioned, we may or may not see him this Saturday. So regardless of whether he can go, just looking long term, God forbid Blake goes down or Donovan goes down, you want more than one running back, obviously. You got to have at least 2 guys in the mix. Did we see anything from CJ Stokes or anybody else in the first 3 games to say, okay, if we get into that position and we need the 3rd guy to take on 10 or 12 carries, then we're good with that?
I actually like CJ Stokes a lot. He, to me, Donovan Edwards is a different animal in terms of an entire athlete. He's unbelievable all around, pass catcher, fast, does all that. CJ Stokes is more of a Hassan Haskins, like actual running back, where he's going to be a power runner and get up the gut. So I don't think, now is he Blake Corum or Donovan Edwards? Probably not quite yet. But I think he could carry, I don't know about 12 carries, but he can get 5, 6, maybe 7 carries and be okay. And then that's where I also think Michigan can get really creative. A.J. Henning has gotten some handoffs actually already. They could utilize a lot of different things there with a lot of their weapons that they have at the wide receiver, at the tight end position as well, and make sure that they're okay there.
Well, and I think another benefit
CJ reminds me a lot. He kind of reminds me of Karate a little bit.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that CJ reminds me of Karan Higdon a lot. Kind of the same type of build. Kind of a low center of gravity type of runner, and we saw how effective Karan Higdon was here. And I have full confidence in CJ Stokes being able to fill in at least at that second string spot. To give Blake Corum a spell here and there. Go ahead, Des.
Well, and I think you can also substitute it by just kind of the bubble screens, the now screens, and getting the ball out on the edges to those guys. Ronnie Bell, would love to see a little more from Cornelius Johnson, Andrew Anthony.
Yes.
So I think Michigan has enough where, if a guy does get dinged up, you just kind of the strategy changes a little bit, and I don't think that's any different pass game to run game. Like if if Ronnie Bell gets dinged up or catches a cramp, let's say from the 4th quarter, you just make adjustments. But I think one of the bigger things is if we were substituting the 2021 team for this game, I would have a little more concerns about potentially winning a shootout game. Whereas this year, because of JJ and just the offense just being a little more wide open, I would imagine no one really has concerns about potentially winning a shootout game against Maryland. Now that's not ideal. You obviously want the defense to play well, but crazy things happen in college football. So I feel more comfortable and way more comfortable that if Michigan does potentially get in a shootout or even need to score a lot early, that they'll be just fine with just the way the offense has been run, and especially with JJ at the helm.
And just along those same lines, I'm going to throw it out again to all three of you, just in regards to what you've seen the first 3 games. Ronnie Bell's had the most targets, most catches, most production. Is he the true number one? And with a wide receiver room that's so deep, are we seeing guys kind of fit roles, slot, deep threat, the various roles that in an ideal situation, and this is tough to achieve, but in the ideal situation, you kind of have your guy that, your red zone threat, you got your deep ball guy, you got your number one guy that's the best route runner and hands guy that always gets, you got your Hunter Renfro type, you got your various styles of receivers. Now that's, again, in a perfect world, but do we seem to have wide receiver roles? And look at Des is right on it there.
Well, Justin, before you kind of go into that answer, the odd man now, just based on that, to me, is Cornelius Johnson. I mean, I think Roman Wilson has a definitive role. He's the speedster guy, and to me, he sticks out as the speedster guy in his wide receiving core, right? And then you have Ronnie Bell, who I think is the slot, the guy you need to make for JJ. I need to go to a guy that I know is going to get open, has reliable hands. I'm going to Ronnie Bell. I feel like Cornelius Johnson is like the odd man out right now. He has 4 receptions this year. I don't look at him as a speedster. I look at him as a really good athlete, good size, really good ability, the raw ability to be a number one. But Justin, do you see that as well? Kind of Cornelius Johnson kind of struggling to find his way, finding his niche within his wide receiving core?
Yeah, and I think I don't know if it's Cornelius's fault or if it's more so the play calling, and I think it's more so them trying to get everybody involved in these first 3 games and figure it out. I mean, they basically had 3 scrimmages to figure out who can do what, and so now what I'm curious more is with these wide receivers, do they continue to spread the wealth amongst everyone, or does it kind of hone in on 3 guys or something like that, where they're going to get the majority of the catches? That will tell me a lot about what this offense is going to be. And they might still keep it wide open so that Penn State and Michigan State don't know who the hell is going to get the ball. Because guess what? There could be a chance here where Andrell Anthony has 3 catches total going into the Penn State game and has 5 catches for 150 yards, 2 TDs, something like that. And so I think they love what they have at wide receiver, and they are going to use it to their advantage where, let's be honest, they could, back to your question, Mark, too, in terms of the roles, like, you can blow the top off, honestly. Roman is the fastest guy on the team. A.J. Henning's fast as hell. Cornelius is that actual, tall, deep threat, and we've seen Andrell do it. I'm missing people. That's how deep it is, really. And so that's where I think that, I'm more interested to see how they use these guys in terms of getting them the ball. And I don't think anybody's really established their exact role just quite yet, because I think that they all can do a lot of it.
But
yeah, and
I would say
I would
definitely
say,
Roman. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Roman, it seems very clear that Roman is the deep threat. He is the guy that's going to blow the top off the defense. And while I do think as we get into Big Ten play that it may happen less frequently, but he is the guy that can take the top off the defense. And you definitely want to scheme that up. And I think Ronnie is clearly the number one, the go-to guy. He's got, at this point, the most catches. So I would assume that trend is going to continue. The bigger, and I don't want to say concern, but the thing that I'm focused on is just keeping all of these guys engaged is the big key, because as a wide receiver, it's just naturally a diva position. You're very dependent on the play calling. You're dependent on the defense. You're dependent on your quarterback. So it's just making sure all of these guys are engaged. This seems to be a culture where there's not going to be any concerns with that. But you would love to have a guy just get just a little bit of love, because number one of the main things, and I think the receivers have done a great job this year, is blocking down the field, because that's what is going to spring Blake Corum for 50, 60-yard runs and Donovan Edwards,
Yeah.
things of that nature. And especially, as they implement more bubble screens, more jet sweeps, those types of things in the offense, is you want those guys giving their all. And I do understand if a guy's not giving his all, you pull him off the field, but it's just managing that. It's, their personalities, their egos. It just is what it is. So that would be the main thing that I would want to focus on, is just making sure all of these guys are engaged, because it is a very deep room. But you definitely want to keep those guys engaged.
Yeah, and I think for one, if you're going to come play receiver for Jim Harbaugh, I'm sure by now you realize that if you get on the field for Jim Harbaugh as a receiver, you go in with the expectation knowing that, look, we're not a very pass-heavy offense. It's just not how we are. And I think you see the whole team kind of embody that. Like, the biggest thing about this receiving corps that I love is that they embody, and I believe take pride in run blocking, right? There's no selfishness. Guys are willing to give up their bodies. They're willing to be physical. You see that all the time. It's how many bubble screens have we seen taken for, chunk yardage, because not only because of the speed and athleticism of the guy who has the ball, but also the really good effective run blocking, right? The initial setup, then guys down the field, right? Not just giving up and pulling up, playing the whole way through. And so I think this is a core and a team that understands that. So I'm not too worried about guys becoming upset, but I do agree with you, Dan. It's the same thing in basketball for like a big man, right? Sometimes you need to touch the ball just to feel like you're a part of it, right? Just to feel in the flow of things. So I do agree with you on that. And it's important and you can't forget Eric All, tight end, then also, Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum also used in the passing game as well. So it's an embarrassment of riches for this coaching staff to utilize, which is a great thing. But also it's up to JJ too as well to make sure he's not getting locked in on, specific guys, that he's being conscious enough to realize, hey, I got to make sure I'm looking for these guys if they're open, not just forcing the ball to them. And that's the, I guess, the hard part when you do have a loaded offensive personnel.
You know what, though? Here's the thing. Ohio State figures it out every year.
Absolutely.
Alabama figures it out every
absolutely.
year.
Alabama, yes, so absolutely.
It cracks me up when people are like, well, what are you going to do? They're all going to transfer. I'm like, everyone else seems to figure it out. So there's a way to do it, and guys will wait their turn if you show out this year with this offense and you really are scoring 40-some points a game by the end of the year or something like that, these wide receivers will wait their turn. And then Andrell Anthony will say, all right, Ronnie, you got your year, go ball out in the NFL. It's my turn, and that type of thing. And so I'm excited for that. One thing I wanted to, if you don't mind, if I flip it to the other side of the ball one more time too.
Absolutely.
One thing I'm excited to see is Mike Sainer still hasn't faced a decent offense yet at safety, and so I love him. He is that dude, and I do think that he will be very good. But, for the first time, he's going to get challenged by a really good offense and a really good quarterback. So how does he respond in that Dax Hill role in that secondary, and how are they gelling as a whole unit as well?
Yeah. But to that, Justin, I brought it up earlier, the pass rush. Look, that was one of the biggest question marks coming into the season. You lost two premier pass rushers in Aiden Hutchinson and Ajabo last year. And, how were they going to – we knew they weren't going to just outright substitute two guys to replace the two guys that's leaving. But you were hoping collectively they'll find some way to generate a similar type of production, right? And thus far, even with given the low level of competition, I think the pass rush has been kind of meh. And I'm still struggling to find who is that go-to guy that when we need third and long, we need someone to disrupt, the pass or get a sack or at least some pressure. Who's going to be that consistent guy? Or a couple guys who could be rotated in that situation. So,
One point too there, to your point, is every team that Michigan faces this year that's going to do much of anything on the offensive side of the ball has a quarterback that can either scramble or just flat out run. You think about Sean Clifford can do it. Peyton Thorne can do it. Obviously, C.J. Stroud can do it, and Talia can do it. So I'm not going to put Spencer Petras on that list. Sorry, Spencer, but I do think that it's a concern. It's something that they need to figure out. I thought that they've done pretty well containing the quarterback so far. Not that they faced a solid quarterback, but I do wonder, because let's be honest, that is what won them the Ohio State game, was getting to the quarterback. That is what won them the Penn State game, that it was getting to the quarterback. And so, what's that going to look like here as they go throughout the rest of the season?
Well, I think a main thing, especially with the defense, is there's going to be some big plays. I think that is inevitable. I think Maryland throws the ball too much. Too many things have to go well for it to be a shutout. So I think going into it with that, of understanding this is going to be the first team that does throw the ball this much, and this is by far the best passing offense that you have faced up until this point. So I think communication, understanding those types of things are going to happen, where a guy misses the call or the signal. I'm sure Maryland's probably going to throw some tempo in there as well to kind of help with the miscommunication. So there's just going to be some things that will happen, but I think overall, I think the guys will play well. And I just think there will be some big plays. I think assuming that in today's college football, with an offense that is as competent as Maryland's, assuming that it's just going to be a shutout, I just don't think that is a feasible result to expect.
Well, I think one thing about Maryland, guys, to keep in mind too, is that they got to clean up a lot on their end in terms of discipline. I mean, last week they had 15 penalties for, I think, 141 yards. That is something that they got to clean up. And I think that's one thing we talked about last year. One of the biggest things that Michigan did that was effective week to week that you can bank on was that they didn't beat themselves. For the most part, they played penalty-free football. And if you can do that, you're going to win a lot of football games. And that is something that Maryland is very prone to, which is making mistakes, hurt themselves with penalties. We know that Talia can, make mistakes and throw picks every now and then. So, get a little loose with the football. So that's also going to be some opportunities for Michigan to take advantage as well. Just Maryland beating themselves and shooting themselves in the foot.
Mark, what are your thoughts on the Michigan defense being able to step up against Maryland's offense?
Well, just because of the lack of experience and the change in roles, Justin hit the San Ristil angle of it, and that's intriguing, because this is going to be his first shot at receivers that can really do it. And they've got 3 or 4 of them with Raheem Jarrett at the top of the list, and he's like a legitimate, top 40 pick in the NFL draft kind of guy. So really, you guys have covered it in regards to just, this is when I listed out Michigan's schedule and I went from top to bottom in regards to toughest to easiest opponent, I gave this team kind of a wild card kind of shot at an upset, kind of a puncher's chance, because this is classic puncher's chance. They're not in the same league. They're not at the same talent level. They don't have the depth. They don't have the play in the trenches, but they got a guy that can sling it. They got receivers that can get it. And they've recruited enough on defense where they got some dudes that could, break on the ball and make a pick, or, make a strip sack that matters if they can get a little lucky. So this is, for me, on Michigan's schedule, this is the wild card puncher's chance. If you told me right now, I would be very surprised if Michigan loses this game. But if you told me it's a 40-34 game and Michigan survived, or if you told me Michigan won 45-14, neither would surprise me.
Well, look, Mark, I've seen your beloved Buckeyes, get fall barely survived Maryland a few years ago. Was it 2018, 17?
Yeah, last year it was 66-17. They beat them.
I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying, like,
What are you
man,
picking up the one game per decade that they
I
chose
know.
in Maryland? Do
I'm
you
just
really want to hear
saying.
the scores from the past
No, I
decade?
don't.
Hey,
I'm just,
I am angry at that one though, because if he just literally goes like
dude.
this with the ball,
Oh, my
in
goodness.
the 2-point
Me and
conversion,
Des,
then Michigan
Justin,
goes
me
to
and
the Big
Des
Ten
talk about this
championship.
all the time. I
Oh
literally
my
a 2-point
God.
conversion. The guy is wide open.
Mark, you
I'm
had
like,
to be like absolutely losing it that game. Especially, I mean, when that play developed, I could not believe it. I'm like, the guy
It
is
was
wide open
perfect.
and he just one hops it.
I was losing it all day because they gave up 300 yards of rushing. Like,
Yeah, they
there were
did.
gaping holes. Like, guys, the Ohio State defense wasn't even on the screen half the game. It was
and
crazy.
due to that,
Oh.
and also more to my pain, due to that added to my abnormal confidence going to the Ohio State game the following week than I did at that point in time.
I know.
Because
I
And it wasn't just that game. I remember that season producing a video going into the Ohio State Michigan game, and I think they had 5 or 6 common opponents and just matching them up. And every opponent, Michigan totally outplayed, and Ohio State didn't.
one time in a row, Mark, we were hot. I was talking big talk. I was talking, and Des, I'm like, I'm on Bama. I was talking a lot. And then we all know we proceeded the following week. They go and put 60 points on us, 62 points to be exact. And one of the dark moments. I know people hate when I bring that up, but it is part of our unfortunate history. Rest in peace, Dwayne Haskins. He played. We made Dwayne I truly believe we definitely boosted Dwayne Haskins at least 16, 17 spots off that game alone.
for sure.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Just saying. But anyway, the point is that Maryland has given people heart attacks in the past.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Are you guys okay with advancing to a Big Ten championship game after losing to Ohio State?
So, okay, that's a great question, because that's what I was going to say. I had friends that are like, after that Maryland game, they're like, good, I want to do it ourselves. And then I'm like, I'll go to Indy. I'm fine with that.
Dude,
however I get there.
Look, beggars can't be choosers, man.
No.
Look, at that point in time, like,
Bro,
look, I was like,
we were trying to get to Indy for the first time. Like,
Yeah,
give me that slot. I do not care. I really don't. It would be it would be very annoying, because then you, Mark, and all your cronies would for sure be talking, and Mark's getting strays too here. But
it's easy. Listen, when you're there and the other team is not, it's just like, oh, hey, you should have took care of business. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
100%.
Yeah. You just got to get there. That's all that matters. That's all that
You
matters.
think
It's
Penn
a full
State
season.
cares in 2016 that would have too long? It was weird where I think Michigan popped them like 49-10.
Oh,
it was an embarrassing game, but they beat Ohio State, and it was weird somehow where Penn State in the title game, and neither Ohio State nor Michigan was, but we were both good. Yeah, I can't. I'll have to revisit and look at exactly what
Penn
happened.
State beat Ohio State head-to-head, and they tied for the division, so Penn State
went to the Big Ten title game. Okay,
because Ohio State had a measurement go their way, and then there you go.
Oh yeah. Oh, the JT spot. There we go.
How did our Maryland
Bring up
preview
Payne.
turn into this? What is going on?
Payne. Okay, you just love to do that. It's okay. It's okay. I mean, I'm still
it's
upset
all right.
that Harbaugh called the play action in, deep in our own territory. And then Des likes to bring up, who was that? Tucson? Who was the running back? He said, man, the running
It was
back
Devion Smith. He missed his blitz pickup.
You don't call
and
a
had
play
he
action
not missed
play
it,
deep in your own territory
Wilton
before
Spate was
halftime.
had a guy open.
I understand.
Well,
Look,
we'll revisit that. But yes,
Yeah,
I get the result was bad, but if your running back picks up that blitz, because Spate shorted the throw because he was getting hit and pressured, and if Devion Smith picks up his assignment, then that's a catch. and
We're not
you're
talking about this right now. We
sure.
gotta move on. I mean, you just call me pain. I don't appreciate. The point
We're
is
on to
that
Maryland.
we're on to Maryland, baby. There we go. We're going to Terps. They got
Yes.
look. Their gear is sweet. You know, one thing you say about Maryland
I
and their
do
Under
love their
Armour.
gear.
Look, they're gonna come out decked out for the game. That is one thing for sure.
That's one account I've never followed is Maryland Twitter. I wonder what they are going to wear. I don't love the half helmets that they do with the checker flag. Is that like for NASCAR or something, or is that just their state flag? Like that they?
I think it's the state flag. I don't know.
It's
but
an
it's
odd
not a
one to
great
throw
one.
on your helmet, but to each their own. I you know,
It looks
is what it is.
it looks kind of cool in the end zone. I feel like it's a
Mm.
different pattern, but on the helmet, it's a lot. A lot
It's just
going
very
on.
busy, very busy.
Yeah, yeah.
Question:
I
So,
agree.
have you guys been paying attention to Miami? You know, Tyler Van Dyke's been having a really good start to his season. I mean, how much of that do you put? Do you know attribute that to Josh Gaddis?
All I saw on the message boards this week were fire Gaddis.
Fire Gaddis,
already.
yeah.
Okay,
man,
okay.
man.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious. He's not Will Light down there right now. Okay.
So Justin Dre is one of the Michigan fans that, in the midst of success, does a good job of creating more enemies for the Wolverines because of how just he loves it. He just basks in it. He's throwing shade at Mark all the time about Ohio State, and part of it is that is what's cool about college football and the rivalries. But goodness gracious, Ray. When Gaddis was here calling offense and people wanted to wring his neck, it was a little different. It was a little
Ray
different.
makes
That
as
speed and
many
space.
enemies with Michigan fans as he does with everybody else.
I do. Like, look, man. Look, just
That's a
I don't
talent.
know.
It is.
Here's the problem, you know, and this goes back to the whole scheduling thing. It's that the players can't control that, right? They go out there and do their job, and by all means, they've done a splendid job within that, right? They destroyed everyone they played. But when I'm looking at it from an analytical perspective, just because we're destroying trash doesn't mean I'm gonna turn it into a souffle. That's a terrible analogy, but I'm just saying, like,
It is.
Like,
Glad you recognize that. Like, I have no idea what that means.
I don't know what I said either, but I'm just saying, like, it's just like last year, right? Like, I want to say we're going to take a step forward. We're going to beat Ohio State in a horseshoe. We're going to move on. We're going to defend our Big Ten title, and we're going to challenge and maybe win a national title this year. I would love to say that, right? But I realized of the season, you get to different levels of proving ground, right? And I just haven't seen this team get to a game, albeit an opponent, where it's like, okay, this is a legitimate test. This team across from us does these various things well. They are also, sorry guys, they're also on a trajectory somewhere where we're going to be or above. Let's see how we handle that, right? We thought Iowa would be one of those games. They can't find the end zone. So that's probably not the case either. So that's just how I look at things, man. And I think sometimes my fellow Wolverine fans take that as negativity. No, it's not that. I just need to see it first before I can believe it.
Yeah. No, I'm in agreement there. I'm not ready to crown Michigan 2022 Big Ten champs yet. You know, I think that they look good. They look good, but I also think that, you know, in 2017, Michigan would have looked good against these three opponents probably, right? And that team ended up 8-5. So, you know, I'm not quite ready to do that now. Do I think that they have a chance? Absolutely, I do. You know, I think that they do have a chance to go back and beat all they have a chance to beat every single team on their schedule, 1,000%. And I think that they'll probably give Ohio State the best game in the shoe that they have since 2016. That's what would be my prediction. I'm not going to go in there and say that they're going to win it because I know that crowd will be probably one of the most insane crowds that stadium has ever seen because they are going to be out for blood. But I do think we're going to watch this team go throughout this season starting this week and prove that they are, one of those top probably 7 or 8 teams in the country throughout the year.
I mean, make no mistake about it. Real quick, Des, you go out and you beat a 3-0 Maryland team, albeit their competition hasn't been the best either. But you go out and you beat a 3-0 Maryland team pretty
Better than Michigan's.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you for that, Mark. That is true. SMU is definitely better than anybody they play. Absolutely. Anyway, they go out there to beat Maryland by 25, 30 points. I mean, that's really impressive. So, there's definitely something based on their performance that you can pull and say, wow, maybe this team is really, really good. Go ahead, Des.
Well, I think of where was this team at this time last year and where it ended up. You know what I mean? Like early on, it was like, they played Washington, I believe, in the out of conference. You just didn't know. I think after 2 weeks, we all knew like, Washington's not what we thought it would be, what that team would be. And I believe was Wisconsin their conference opener. I can't remember if that's who they opened with last year. I think it was. I think that was the conference opener. So. But I just think of where this team was last year versus where it ended. And there's just so much football left to play that, the goal, and I said it all throughout last season, is just to stack the wins. That's all you need to worry about is come out, play your best game you can against Maryland, and then next week play the best game you can against Iowa, and just so on and so forth. And in Michigan, to me, Michigan has the talent to be undefeated going into Ohio State. And when it comes to rivalry games, all bets are off. You just never really know. But, I just think it's so early, and the teams that they've played, it's hard to grasp anything from that, right? Did you learn anything for sure about this team? And we talked about it before, the season. What game is it that we will know something? And we thought it would be Iowa, and now, slowly it seems like that game is getting pushed further and further down the line.
Yeah, I mean, here's my take on that. Yes, is Michigan's non-conference schedule worse than just about anybody's in the country? 100%. There's no doubt that we're admitting that. But I don't know what any team is like 3 games into the year. That's, come on, man.
I know Notre Dame was overrated. I know that much. I mean,
but still, I think that there are teams that probably have played like crap that will end up okay. And then there are teams that have played well, maybe a Texas, that end up like crap too. I just don't know. I don't know how good Washington is. So that means I don't know how good Michigan State is. So that's where I'm like, everyone that's like, oh, we don't know about Michigan. We don't know shit about anybody. We're in week 4.
More. We know substantially more about some teams.
But you know what?
Washington
it's been
proved something.
Yeah, they proved that MSU's defense secondary still sucks.
They proved a lot.
That their secondary is still broken, and they need to fix it.
They beat them up on the line of scrimmage too. They beat them in every possible way.
But MSU I guess couldn't run the football.
Exactly.
My question there is like, did they beat them up on the line because their line is good, or because MSU's defense is bad? That's where I think like there's still so many questions.
Absolutely.
Is Michael Penix like a stud, or I know he's solid, but is he like an elite quarterback now, or is MSU's secondary still broken?
But when Washington does that to Michigan State, we know that Michigan State, we don't know that they're the top 10 team that they were last year. They probably aren't. But we know that they're a top 30 or 40 team in the country.
For sure.
And so Washington didn't handle UConn, Hawaii, Colorado State. They handled Michigan State.
Yeah. But you know what, guys, when you really think about it, it's been kind of a wacky start to the season. I mean, you see Appalachian State go down, and they lose a shootout to North Carolina. And what was it, triple overtime, 63-61. Then they go down to Texas A&M. They shock A&M, 17-14, right? You see Marshall go to Notre Dame, and win 26-21, turn around the very next week, lose a overtime game to Bowling Green. It's been a very wacky college football season. I mean, Oregon has looked good the last couple of weeks compared to how they looked against Georgia. Granted, Georgia may do that to a lot of teams, really good teams, but still, it's like Justin said, it's a lot kind of going on, and teams are kind of still rounding into form. I mean, I think Florida is a different team every week. You really don't know what they are. So, there is a point to that where we're still trying to figure out who's good and who's average, who has potential to ascend, right? Because one thing about the Michigan last year was that they were constantly, for one, they started unranked, and they were constantly on ascension, right? Getting better and better throughout the year. You see certain guys surface and become studs. I mean, I don't think anyone knew Blake Corum was going to pop quite the way he did going into last season. You saw Dobbin Edwards making an impact as a true freshman. Ronnie Bell gets hurt the first game of the year. Cornelius Johnson stepping up, right? You saw things throughout the year that you didn't necessarily know was going to happen. So, that's the part that I think Justin's kind of alluding to, is that, things are still kind of shaking itself out and playing its way out.
Really, I'm just annoyed that people won't shut up about our non-conference schedule. Listen, I get it, but it doesn't need to be the main topic of discussion in week 4. Let's get through Maryland here.
My thing is if you win, it doesn't matter. If you lose, now everything comes into play, right? The revisionist history and hindsight's 2020. People are, that's essentially what's going to happen. So I think Michigan will be fine. You roll in Ohio State undefeated, you should, and just let the best man win at that point. So I think that's what it's gonna
take care of your business Saturday. Try to keep guys as healthy as possible. We've seen enough injuries so far. And it's to some key players. Eric Gall's banged up now. Donovan Edwards knows working through something. I don't know if they got Barnhart back or not, but. It definitely, that's also something to keep in mind too. You want to keep guys as healthy as possible.
Mark, you look like you want to say something.
Nope, I am good to go. I got to head out. Justin, appreciate you stopping by.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. I'll try and join you guys here as much as I can.
Sounds great. Adrian Roberson asked, Justin, do you go live on the tube?
I do not that often, but if people are wanting to see it, we can for sure.
Okay, so pretty flexible. Okay, yeah, I think this will be a good challenge for Michigan this week. We will obviously be here post game after Michigan gets that win against Talia Tagovailoa and the Maryland Terps. So I think probably around 3:30. And then, we will be here. So, Justin, thanks again, man, for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. Dre, as always, man, good to see you. And everybody, thanks for tuning in. We will see you all Saturday around 3:30 post game.
And let's hope that Tua is not talking to Talia saying, "Hey, man, this is what Mike McDonald did to us. They like to run certain defensive schemes because this is what we did Sunday. We don't need another Tagovailoa family. We don't need a repeat performance on Sunday.
4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
No, we don't need that. We don't need that. Hopefully, Tua took all that with him. Tua took all that with him last week. It's nothing left with Talia this week.
Yeah,
I bet he called him. I'm
sure he did. If I had a big brother that just I mean, it's only smart. If I had a big brother that just played against a scheme with a defensive coordinator that I know they're probably running a very similar defense that has the same background at Michigan, I'm sure they did talk. Why not? But that's it.
Sure. I mean, one issue is not covering Tyreek Hill. That is one pretty big issue for everybody.
Granted, Maryland doesn't have Tyreek Hill, so we can just get it out the way. But yeah, right.
So they'll be
a
good.
Different conversation if they had Tyreek Hill. I'll tell you.
Yeah. So we'll see. All right. Appreciate it, everybody. Thanks again, Justin, and you guys have a good rest of your day, and we'll see y'all Saturday.
Sounds good. See you guys.